I think openness and honesty between Christians is massively important for lots of different reasons. Some of those reasons are pragmatic, some of those reasons are theological, but above all, they're biblical. One reads the New Testament particularly, you see that church is about a community, it's about people who are engaging with one another and are really called to engage on the deepest level. One of the concerns is that there's a lot of superficiality in our relationships together. The classic thing would be a Sunday morning, churches come together for worship. We've sung maybe a debtor to mercy alone. We've heard prayer, which has acknowledged our sinfulness before God, our struggles, our battles, and all of that sort of thing. And maybe we've heard a sermon on John 21 and Peter's confession and restoration. And then at the end of the service, the conversations often can be quite superficial. Conversations about the week, about family, about things that are going on. And so often there's a lack of responsiveness and openness between us. Now, I know that's Sunday, and Sunday can be a bad measure of this. But I think it overflows into the whole of life. I wonder how many Christians really have a meaningful relationship with other Christians where there's real openness and honesty about where they are. I mentioned that there are pragmatic reasons for this. I think that if we fail to be open and honest with one another, we deprive each other of ministry, the opportunity to be ministered to, and the opportunity to minister to others. We are called to bear one another's burdens. We're called to weep with those who weep, to mourn with those who mourn. And if we're not open and honest with one another, we're not able to give or receive that kind of ministry. And again, looking at it pragmatically, I think that we actually need this because for mission, I think the world needs to see the honesty of what authentic Christianity looks like. For a lot of people, the feeling is that Christians have got it all together. They're the good people. They're the religious people. We might be despised in our culture now increasingly more, but the idea is that somehow we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. But I think when unbelievers actually come into the church community, whether that's formally or informally, and they discover real people who are genuinely battling with the real issues of life, but finding within that the grace of God and the reality of the fulfillment of God's promises towards us in Christ, I think that becomes a very powerful challenge to the unbelieving world. There are theological reasons as well. I think because of what the gospel is. The gospel is about the response to the fact that we are sinful, that we're part of a fallen, broken world. It's as if somehow when we come to Christ, we move on from that. We never move on from the gospel. And there's always the awareness of, who am I? I'm a sinner in desperate need of the grace of God. That needs to be reflected in our relationships and the way in which that we talk to each other, and clearly in our sanctification. I mean, look at the New Testament metaphors: running a race, wrestling contest, fighting a battle. It speaks about this terrific, visceral, challenging language, identifying the reality of problems and difficulties. We need to be honest with one another about that. We have not come to Christ and everything is all right now. We're broken, we're flawed, we're desperately in need of encouragement and support. And that's why I think honesty and openness is really important between Christians.